Sometimes I feel like it's much easier for me to think ideas and have them unfold in my conscious perception. Is much easier than being able to follow along with that thought or slow down the thought enough that I can just speak it out as I go along. But I guess this is one of the skills of flow, to learn how to pace your thoughts and be able to come back to and connect with old thoughts. So I'm just going to get right back into to the relevance with deck protocol. So we have we're looking at the relationship between two triads right now. These two triads are the temperamental triads of the pragmatic and the devotional, which are we have pragmatic of process, constraint, protocol. We have devotional of narrative, commitment, and execution. And the way that these relate to each other is a relationship, as I was just describing, which reflects again the triad protocol. What we're seeing here, this relationship between abstract and the concrete, in which cases these triads are respectively filling the so abstract is the pragmatic triad, concrete we have the devotional triad, and I kind of feel like this has probably been already explained in a million ways in the Telegram group, the Portal Mountain Lobby group. But I guess it always keeps coming up, or maybe not coming up, and just it's kind of difficult when it's assumed content and or assumed to be known, but it's not actually known, and it's not like the onus isn't really on us to ensure that you have a working working program like that you're on the ball online. Alright, anyways, that was nothing. Just a repeat alarm. So we're looking at the pragmatic versus devotional triad. For now, I believe, discussed earlier about the AO, which is an implementation of the deck protocol, which is which is representing one of the core functionalities of the dashboard, which is the as I've called it in the past, the holoculture database. I suppose that would be that's a kind of way back term, but we're talking about capturing in external memory certain pieces of information which are captured in a way that's isomorphic with with our perception, with the various ways of perceiving, again in which we're able to see here a triad. So archetype, model, guild, whole-on triad. I believe I went into quite a bit of detail there. So between the temperaments we're seeing so I guess starting from top, whole-on, and then archetype, model, guild. That's kind of usually the... Is it? No, actually. And then guild, model, archetype. Believe mimetic at the bottom. So we're just recreating the layers from bottom to top. That's the representation I'm about to give here. So this is of the different... so this is perception, the perception mechanics triad. So there we have, and this is represented also by a document, one of the documents, perception mechanics. But we have, so in the hold-on slot, we have the perceptive temperament itself. In the guild slot, we have the devotional temperament. In the model slot, we have the pragmatic temperament. And in the archetype slot, we have the academic temperament. So the three of the blow are really no different than the one above, but it's kind of meta in a way, and it is a temperament on its own. It's definitely ideal to be able to perceive more than one temperament, and when any one temperament is mastered, you do gain a vision of the others. It's a matter of practice, I suppose, and experimentation. Hopefully bootstrapping your models of these things. I'm talking generally with the entry into membership of the guild. So in terms of deck protocol, we have these two triads. We know that index card protocol is related to the deck protocol. This is the media expression technology or process that we've been using involving index cards of multiple colors, I think 5 or 6 colors including white, and then assuming that one of each of these slots or some particular slots is going to take up a color on these cards. That's kind of the basis for attempting a schema of the particular deck. So the deck schema. So this is I guess would be whatever a protocol specific to your deck. For the how the colors themselves are relevant or meaningful in your particular schema. So that's something that probably anything that does deck protocol can probably do that. But we're gonna find. So I believe that we're gonna find that the schema based on the model is going to become part of the standards of the program. That's just what's expected. But presumably always maintaining the flexibility of the system that's required. I'm talking about ways that abstract and concrete relate to each other. Just how they can appear card to card if we're using index cards. A lot of what the information that we're interested in here is derived information, so it requires calculations, and therefore computer-aided software, or however you would say that, so computer software is more ideal for storage of a database like this, and presentation, and just dynamic updating of all your different views based on your context. This kind of stuff is much easier with programmability. So what I've been working with so far, what I believe we've found is that constraint is going to be a color, protocol is a color, and then from the devotional triad we have commitment would be another color, commitment and or problem. I have these written down, and or question, you could say, so question and commitment or problem. that would be so another color there, and that's the abstract of the devotional triad, as in commitments, and then your execution of those commitments is so like your schedule, your ability to schedule and execute. That's where we have where we see the concrete of the triad, otherwise the guild of the triad, guild slot. So that's execution, and again, so we expect a color there as well. Okay, so I guess I'll just quickly talk about the relationship between them. So we're going to expect that that when you're committing to something, or you have a commitment of, like, let's say a certain task or a type of task to do a concrete instance of a certain type of a task, that there needs to be ways of capturing instructions or the protocols. So here's where we're linking to the abstract. When we're talking protocols, we're really talking about something that maintains constraints. The protocol is just the guild slot of the pragmatic triad. So we expect when we're looking at a task or a commitment or something that we would within that we would automatically be seeing links to what actual areas of behavior are we talking about here, and these are iterated in protocol format. Yeah, and so as I was speaking earlier, as well as constraint format, but I believe we would. So the information about constraints is derived from the protocols themselves. Yeah. So and we're seeing here that the protocol being in the guild slot is really. Like what you're always going to see is you always have concrete expression, and then when we're building up the layers using triad protocol, then so this is just a pattern that we're often seeing or experiencing when we're describing, is that at least from bottom to top, we're talking about concrete expression, and from that we're developing the model. Okay, so, and this is something we see over time as well with the development of our abstract phase space, depending on the types of experience we have throughout our life, starting with infanthood, with childhood, where we hardly know anything. We have like food protocols, or like we begin to see what is food and what is not food. We make this discrimination, and yeah, so this is what firms up the abstract phase space, which is your own particular reality tunnel. That's one simplistic way of looking at it. Otherwise, you just have to see it as regions of meaning. So we're relating the abstract and the concrete together. What I'm expecting in the deck protocol, or the dashboard software, or AO software, we're expecting to see, or I'm expecting to see, derivative type information being built into this. So in other words, like a timeless APS explorer. What's usually implied by that is going to be like the abstract. So we're focusing on constraint, the net of constraints together, not necessarily in any kind of concrete format such as a protocol, but we're looking at more the timeless, the web of meaning, So what is real and what is not real? What is our reality? How is it fabricated and put together? What are these seemingly feeling like concrete walls of what is real and what is this? And this is what we can blast away at, or blast open, using what we've called the linchpin protocol, which is actually a meditation. This is related to the was it Socrates or whoever asking what is justice in and of itself? So as soon as you try and define justice, because you're doing this for the first time in civilization, as soon as you start trying to define what it is in and of itself, you simply start defining other things, and then and how those relate back to the original, to define justice. You're going to start defining all kinds of other types of things too. And a web of meaning emerges, and it eventually becomes filled in with enough complexity that it even virtually can capture the lives and operations of supposedly of a living organism or a being or life, and we may become subject to it. But that's when that's part of the unmooring of the breakaway civilization, which is this is also the main conflict point and the main showdown of the Great Axial War. This unmooring of culture, this externalization of meaning into external symbols, in which our outside world, our senses are bringing to us symbols into which we're subject, whether it has a coherent inner meaning to us or not, whether it's coherent with our being or not, especially in context of strange loop, which it most often isn't. Meaning, does it respond? Does it respond to me, to who I am? Is there a dynamic? Is there a dynamic in society? Is there a sharing, a give and take, an understanding of fluidity of meaning, potentially, especially considering the different perspectives and where it's all come from, through the analogic, through living life, living through life to learn what reality is. Things, ideas, concepts, building on previous concepts. This is analogy through time, to create, and this is how you're creating protocols instead of simply abstractions, because the protocols are more narrative based. They're based on lessons of life, things learned through time, stuff happening. So especially feedback processes where you're intentionally trying to maintain a constraint, and that's how you go about guiding yourself to build a protocol. You ask, which constraints do you wish to maintain? Okay, that's kind of your scope of behavior. You may point to outside things that need to be done, but then you're going to try and stay as narrowly within that scope without overstepping too much, but creating links to other nodes in the web of meaning. So linking to and kind of passing off responsibility for certain areas or other core. I suppose there would be some recurrent categories which are almost always there, like the meta categories. But that's more just a side note for me later, I guess. So we were talking DEC protocol. I'm going to see if I can just quickly get through here. So we talked about the index card protocol, involving assigning colors as well to meanings within a certain schema. So the idea is you're making a schema. That's part of the deck protocol. Also, we are creating a schema which is based off the model, which is isomorphic, which we hope will find, or expect that it will find itself manifesting in the very architecture of the dashboard of the AO. So I guess maybe I could just wrap up that thought about the specific schema I gave, including constraint, protocol, commitment, and execution, just to kind of give us a small, slight direction or bootstrapping of the deck protocol to enable anybody to actually do this or use it or try it, in case you haven't already put together enough of what you need to do so. Here's just a quick run through of how you may use each card in at least the schema that I've created. So we talked about, we had a color for the concrete of the devotional triad. So the concrete of the devotional triad, that's what I'm calling the guild. Guild is interchangeable with concrete. I'm just using a different triad. So concrete, just for whatever's, we're talking concrete, abstract, mimetic. Those are layers of the neural operating system which are perceivable and directly experienced or experienceable or experimented upon, manipulated in ways, etc. Of course, we have the hole on there being shared past the horizon. So under execution, we expect things like an actual schedule, so a calendar. So I'm just giving a basic idea, a to-do list. So you start a to-do list in the day. There you go. Pick whatever color. I think I had red for mine. That's your concrete. That's your narrative. You're gonna do this, and this is your context. Throughout your day, you can have tasks or just schedule certain events or meetings. All right, and so looking in the commitment slot, what might that look like? So right away, trying to look at the commitment slot, we're seeing a conflict between, or not a conflict, but a something that we have to pay attention to. So this is basically triad protocol. To pay attention to the dynamic between abstract and concrete. So I'm here describing our abstract. We have commitment, concrete. We have execution. So depending on where exactly you want to go with this, with the model and what you're trying to capture, various aspects of concrete could be up to could be said as like the execution of a program, you could say you are executing currently. Like, you could look at what you're doing right now, and at any moment when now is now, which is always, you could take stock of what programs you're running, what programs you're executing, and this is your execution slot. So in its simplest form, in that purpose there, I would think that allocation, I guess, of space-time, of where something is going to happen, as well as movement of the body to make it happen, into, like, you could say, slots. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Like, I think so this is more in the abstract, as far as what we're capturing in a deck protocol here. So what you're capturing with the execution card is like your time slots, what you've carved out, and your locations, if you will, if you want, time and place kind of thing, areas of space-time, of real estate that you've set up, so in your schedule that you're able to make. Okay, so the abstract there, corresponding to commitment, is what we actually have, what we're doing with that time. So in commitment cards, I guess you could say, you may have a commitment to take martial arts every week, say twice a week, after work or after school. You have to go in the evenings, or you're committed to go. This is your commitment. And so that would be an example of a commitment, to keep going, to keep doing this thing, to keep training, to increase in the skill of self-defense. This is the form of a commitment. And then, so within the execution card, you would, you're drawing a picture of a calendar, or you're writing a to-do list for a day, or not a to-do list, actually a schedule for a day. So to-do list is unordered. It's too abstract. You would have to you should translate a to-do list into these. I guess they end up being paired, and again, this is how or where programming would be useful for displaying all the different ways that we have interconnections between these things. So we have a schedule in which we are carving out space-time. So we have a schedule and available, like, I guess, real estate, if you will, or whatever it is, whatever you need. Anyways, so yeah, I would say that that would be one way of capturing the concrete, would be just as like a schedule that, if you looked at it, there would always be a bar on it, you could say, which is going through time, and it's taking you from one commitment into another. And I guess there's no reason why you couldn't see these, you couldn't see these being nested in certain ways or related to each other, the commitments themselves. This is where we we'll see a parallel into the model of the pragmatic triad. So the constraint, the web of constraints. We're going to see a similar web, this similar unfolding, this similar fractal. In the case of the commitment and the web of commitments, and how they all make sense together, where the source is, which is one thing we are trying to illuminate, which is the body, not just the flesh, but the organs have been externalized as well. And they always have been. We've always been a part of our environment. We never left. We were never outside of its constraints. So that pretty much covers what we have in AO so far. Something to that effect. Yeah, so again, just to wrap up the martial arts example, so you have this commitment that you're going to keep going, and then you have your actual schedule, which is referencing back to this commitment. That's what you're doing in this time slot. Yeah, so already, if you've been paying attention, you should be able to have a create and work with a rudimentary deck, including two different. So far, we've gone over two different card types that in this model schema. So carrying on, we would come up to protocol. We have protocol and constraint in the pragmatic triad. So we're done with the devotional triad for now. So like I said before, it's going to be best or easiest or most usual to formulate something from the concrete up, because concrete is really our context. It's what's right in front of us. This is how we get grounded. You could call that the grounding protocol. So to make sure we know what we're looking for when we say guild, when we say the concrete, when we say your context, when we say your narrative, when we say the flow of objects in and out of your perception, the story that they tell, that's the concrete. So we always need to come back to that. I mean, and this is an integral part of the triad protocol as well. But I still, again, I like the idea of the grounding protocol. So we're specifically referencing the guild of the triad, and we're trying to point to the context and this kind of this perception, or this ability of perception, or cluing into this of what the body is. This is a very important concept. Yeah, so there's probably a bit more to it for some of the nuances of that, but anyways, so we have a schedule in our deck protocol. We are filling it with commitments. So the schedule is scooping out the space-time. The commitments are filling of the meaning of what we're doing with that time and resources. Protocols are in the format of an instruction. They relate to one another as segments of a semantic tree. So protocols are expressed potentially so using the strike point protocol. So we have the strike point domain, and we're applying it to a protocol. Or an area of behavior, a specific area of behavior. We're trying to capture some protocols that will take care of something in a web of meaning. So this is the APS, where it's concerned with processes of how things get done. How do you do things? And this is what makes up part of what is real to us, part of what is our reality. This is the abstract. This is towards the ideal. These are this is our facility to make sense of this, make sense of life, make sense of perception. So a protocol has this semantic tree type of pattern to it, because we're talking about describing something through time. We're talking about a generic piece of instruction, as if you're taking just a chunk of reality, a chunk of your universe, and able to share that. So what is real? So if you're teaching somebody a skill they don't know, like woodworking, for example, that's not part of their reality. They don't know, like, to a great extent, a lot of what we can imagine is there, but this is an example of how a facet is developed. So yes, still continually in the context of the whole, but we are sharing a world. Like, you could consider a whole world with somebody else, even though they can imagine what that world is like if you tell them about it. But the actual doing the feedback processes and training, mentoring, discipling, whatever way you want to look at it, unless we're doing that, it never becomes real. It never becomes part of our reality. Things can remain theoretical, and we can make a very, very grave mistake of leaving them there without practicing them, without trying to without using them as they should be, which is as bootstrap materials. Any kind of abstract communication that's given to you like that remains as such. You can start to build and develop out and branch out your models, but until the experience matches with, like, there will always be questions. You won't know why things are the way they are until you start to experience that, and and the process of which is a feedback process. This is the feedback observation tracking method. So this is the intentional relationship between the abstract and the concrete to develop a communion or a communication between the two and sustain the dynamism of the abstract. So again, we're getting into the great metaphysical peril, I guess, or whatever, which is to resist change and to stop being fluid and changing with the world around you. That's metaphorically said, is spiritual death. It's referred to like that. The opposite of which, to give an example, is to be like a child again and to be filled with wonder. So, wherever I was going with that, just want to get back to quickly wrapping up what I was talking about. So with the deck protocol, trying to give examples or like explain in more detail, in more concrete detail, how to actually implement deck protocol and index card protocol as we've been developing it, utilizing the model schema, which is what I'm describing currently. So we just got to protocol. So what is this? What do you do? So so you're taking an area of behavior, you're taking a skill or whatever, and you're trying to break it down into pieces into how it can be explainable of how the different elements of the environment interact with each other. So in other words, this is how the different types of objects are interacting with each other within that area of behavior. Then we're already seeing the parallel here. So protocols are little segments of experience translated into an attempt at a general capturing of a protocol. So a general instruction. So this happens on the fly or dynamically with in-person apprenticeship, or again, whatever you want to call it, mentoring. In-person training, because you're live with the other. So ideally what these materials are, these protocol materials or these instructions, are bootstrapping materials which are expedient for bootstrapping the process itself, which we're trying to get at. We're talking about an area of behavior, and we're trying to learn and teach each other how to efficiently transmit or mimetically select and transmit in a again, that word expedient package or way, so which in other words I'm saying is isomorphic with the neural and sociological operating systems. So that's what the model schema is giving us right now. So as I continue, protocols are as I said before. So in a semantic tree of meaning, and so what we're taking here is the types of things, what to expect, but also a motion through time. So the protocol captures instructions in a sort of time-based way, whereas the constraints themselves we can look at in a timeless and a purely abstract way, relating, of course, by constraint to each other, but in this case there's no implementation. So carrying on with protocols, and a concrete way of expressing protocol. No, thanks. We are translating segments of experience, of lived experience, and you could call this kind of wisdom. I suppose as a sort of embodied knowledge, so that being the knowledge of the constraints of how things relate and how they shouldn't go wrong against or in context of each other. the pieces that make up things, which is just other things that make up the other things, and again, so we have the fractal structure. So getting to the meaning web, so we have these movements through time, like instructions, like do this, do that, but each area you're expressing or describing it as a like, okay, you must set up this environment like this, you must set up that, and as well as heuristics. So if this condition is ever met, then do this. If this condition is ever met, then do this. So this is how you're advancing together, advancing in quotes, to create larger pieces of meaning, which is to do a whole thing, or a certain, I guess, not a whole thing. Whatever, a task, a specific objective, some arbitrary. So something that you could say, so this is the intended strike point path. So you're stacking enough protocols together to make it a meaningful something. Like, this is how you do this, or like to take care of this particular organ, or this particular part of a car. Let's say, like, engine might have its own So the protocol itself is the so we're taking types of things and relating them together through time, and sort of like setting up. We're always like setting up types of things, I guess. So or that may be one of the things that we do. We have to set up a number of types of things within an environment, and then interact them a certain way together. So the types of things, again, we're seeing this. So the relationship to between the abstract and the concrete. So in the abstract, we're having constraint. That's the constraint slot, and we're just relating things together timelessly, saying you can't have a car without wheels, you can't have a car without an engine, that kind of thing, or a motor, whatever. But that doesn't say like how to drive a car, or how to fix a car, or how to do anything at all with a car. You're just kind of like, okay, this is what a car. You're trying to answer that question, what is a car in and of itself? And then it explodes in every direction. What is this? What is this? What is this? So that's the strike point path. That's the lightning bolt. Just spreading throughout the meaning. And so in protocol format, we have since we're in the concrete slot, just as we would expect, we are having a meaning of something executing through time, or a semi-time, more so time-based, or contextual. So over time we develop these protocols, we make them better. They're instructions, again, they're bootstrapping material. You don't need the instructions if you already know how to do the thing, which is something beyond just memorizing instructions. This is how we make that great pitfall, by simply maybe memorizing bootstrapping material and then just always keep on using that as a crutch. That would be related to, or we could say, a case of crutch protocol. You could say all participation is by definition depends on the crutch protocol. Although the crutch protocol may have been a little bit more fine-tuned as to mean putting inline information, inline references to higher level or meta protocols as you go along through an expression. So again, we can look at the protocol database as just what we've learned through time. Our best practices these are our ideas of how process work, and they are told in the form of kind of like a story, like you do this and you do this and you do this. So yeah, that's what you would write on a card. We would have another color here for the schema, so we're using the model schema to set up these index cards, how we're going to end up using them. And so I think we've got protocol down. How you could actually try and picture it, I suppose and assume you could try drawing a flowcharty type I presume a semantic tree, although it depends on how you look at it. You might be using it too abstractly. So again, we have the flowing through time, and we are trying to generally capture some instructions, which are to be foregrounded and backgrounded, again, as we see here, which is an intentional juxtaposition, or of the concrete and abstract layers. So in your abstract, you're holding a model, and in your concrete, you're running through, and you keep comparing it to that model. So this is ideally how to bootstrap the taking in of instructions and turning them into, in other words, integrating them. So becoming a member of those instructions, whatever they're pointing to, whatever the area of behavior. If there was a guild for that, or it could be said to specifically for that, you would be a member of that. Because again, it's more than just memorizing the bootstrapping material and continually following instructions. We are talking about integration with the APS, some aha moments, some eurekas, just as while I say things here, and it gets filtered out into various media, and you end up interpreting it in ways that seems very coherent and congruent with your own experience of reality, of perception. You get those aha moments. It feels good. The dopamine hits, like I said I would. So foregrounding and backgrounding, we're talking about abstract and concrete. And intentionally setting them up, intentionally running experiments. This is the feedback, observation, tracking method. And so we can draw, like, so at each node of this tree, just speaking about diagramming protocols, you could have at each node, I don't even know, like if you're writing it like a story, it could take a few different forms. I'm thinking of like maybe a cloud with a few different circles in it. That could be like one small area of the story that has to come together. So like, I guess we have to use a concrete example, like unlocking a door, opening a door, getting into a door. So bypassing the security, if authorized or whatever, even if unauthorized, so we could start spanning out right away. But we're talking about unlocking a door. So presumably you have a key. So I'm kind of thinking in terms of scenes, maybe. So the first scene is like, so how to get through a door, how to get into your house, whatever. So first scene is you, the door, the key, and the lock. And so the lock position is is on, or a 1, or whatever. So you cannot open the door, you cannot turn the handle. So presuming you already know that, so we have the door handle, we have the lock, we have the key, we have the door, we have a perimeter around where we're trying to get into, so this is why we need to go through a door. So this is I'm seeing as a scene, so I could write these words all down and then say relate the key into the lock. So we know that the constraint of the key of the lock is very specific. It has a code to it, and on top of the general constraints of what a lock is and a matching to a key, we have the specifics of the configuration of the pins. So we know that the pins need to be moved into a line. Let's just simplify it and say that, something like that. The pins all need to be lined up, so you have to push them up, but all at their own level depending on a code. And this is how the data of the door is interacted with, the door lock. So the lock has data. That data is a key or an encoding to a key, and the physical key is what actuates the lock itself. So what the first scene is, you have a key, a lock, which the lock is locked, and you have a person there trying to get in, and so we take the key, put key in lock. So that's like your first thing, your first scene, put the key in the lock, turn the key, that would be your next. So yep, so we're still in the first scene, I guess, the same elements. I don't know how to, I don't know if that's, so maybe like a whole different scene would be like picking the lock, I don't know, but that would be a different protocol for sure. Maybe that's, so maybe ideally a scene is a protocol is, or a scene is the, as I've said, or described before, the strike point, context. What did I call it though? The domain. Okay, so the strike point domain. So we're talking about the protocol domain, and ideally it's a single scene. And maybe the scenes are how protocols might connect to each other, or maybe I'm just conceptualizing it with using this terminology, which may change later or may prompt discussion. So we turn the lock. So we turn the lock, remove the key, or turn the key, remove the key, and we could describe this in more complicated ways, but people will figure out what these instructions mean, even in their basic sense, even if we're missing parts. This is what's expected. What's always expected, but it's not always obvious. We call this hand holding when we over verbosely instruct something, like specifically talking about, okay, turn it to the left, now turn it back to the right, now lift out the key, or now remove the key, and this is the unlock sequence, or put it in, turn it to the right, turn it to the left, and this is the lock sequence, or whatever. Like, so these could be, this could be a decision tree, like are you locking or unlocking, are you coming or going? So this could be like the door, dealing with the door protocol. So that's your domain, your protocol domain. So you would have a decision, maybe decision tree. I'm not sure. Coming or going. Do you want to lock or unlock it? This protocol shows you how to put the key in and take it back out, and now you're able to get through. So, in the context of our scene here, where we are trying to enter the door, so we take the person puts the key in, actuates the lock, takes the key out, next step is, so we'd have a line going down, I guess, to another area. So the handle, involving the handle. So this is where the handle comes into the scene, you could probably say. And again, I want this should be diagrammed kind of through time as a decision trees here or there, wherever necessary for much more complicated things, or for just expanding out the scenario into its context, into whatever other behaviors may be related to coming home or whatever. So so we unlock, so turn the handle, pull the door, pull or push depending on the door, and enter the perimeter. So there you have a small like flow chart, and kind of the idea here is to make sure that we are linking types of things. I think this is what links in the abstract and the concrete. So make sure that from these protocols we can actually derive webs of meaning in a more timeless fashion. So this is where we're putting together the constraints. And whenever we are, so one of the ways we are defining constraints, you could say, is simply, or at least this is how we have worked with it, with the idea, is to link to say, okay, I have a constraint, or a type, so a door, so a perimeter needs a door needs a lock. Okay, so this is called a secure perimeter type of thing. One of the things it needs is a door. That's a type of thing. Another thing that it needs is a lock, as a type of thing, right? And so to be moving in this environment with these types of things, we are expressing in protocol what you actually do to interact with them, and we could go farther back into the creation of a perimeter. So to create a secure perimeter, so you need to install a door, so to leave an access hole in a perimeter, so to make a wall, so we have wall protocols. So we're able to go into all different kinds of things to actually make these happen. And this is more the ideal abstract. When we are building these, when we are simply creating, like that's probably I'm gonna delete the likes. Maybe not from audio, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Probably will cut it, so good. So I got way too excited there. So we were talking about abstract and concrete, the relationship between protocols and constraints, and what we will have is so a lot of our protocols will simply be how to create something, but then there's also protocols for the maintenance, protocols for the usage, protocols for the sustainment. So I guess what I was trying to get on there was just a bit of a different dimension that we'll see here, which is how to create into existence, or how to bootstrap certain processes, or including certain objects which may be required for a particular system. So how to bootstrap, how to kickstart, how to kick off these environments. So that's a definitely an important aspect of protocols and what they're for. So aside from just the protocol, so in the case of the door, so going back to that, so locking the door, the reason for executing that protocol as opposed to building the door is the same, sort of. the context that we have here for locking the door is you want a secure perimeter. Okay, so that's kind of the same context for building that secured perimeter and for building it how it is. But when you leave, you want to be able to lock the door and make sure that it's safe and protected from entropy, let's say. So you're creating a safe environment. So you're still doing the same when you go to lock that. When you go to lock that, you're maintaining and sustaining. The reason you're doing that action is to maintain and sustain what that thing is, which is a secure perimeter. Okay, what it means to you, what that particular assemblage of real estate means to you. So we've described protocols and being able to articulate them in a form of like a visual tree, hopefully including like a through time aspect or through this, as I described, like a scene aspect. So a play through a scene. You're kind of giving an archetypal representation of that unfolding, of that area of behavior, to be used as bootstrapping material for a particular skill. So what we have the ability with software to do, as opposed to index card protocol, is much more easily navigate the web of meaning. So even from an abstract case of just what your reality is, based on the protocols that as they are have been captured, so you're able to navigate that much easier. So instead of finding and sorting through cards, trying to find cards and then lining up how they relate and making the picture, you're able to just scale this web of wherever you want, like a car, like an engine, how to fix an engine or whatever for even a particular model or whatever, how to do a certain process, or how things work in general, like how do they work, what do they need, and what are the different parts. So you're able to scale this cosmos or cosmology. So by navigating constraint and their relation to each other, we have this sort of abstract view. And then, so for example, when we would click on a particular abstraction, a particular type, we can see not only all the constraints that it's linked to, or how it constrains other things, how you need this thing to have other things to be in existence, but also reverse. So a list of the things that, so vice versa, vice versa. So you have cards with types of things on them relating to other types of things, both in the sort of so articulating constraints is kind of interesting. It's a relationship, and it may look, or it does look different one way or the other. Like, it matters which is your source reference point for a constraint relationship between types. Just a quick example, because a car needs wheels. A car has to have wheels. But wheels don't have to be put on a car. Wheels can go on so many other things, a bicycle, a wagon. So the relationship, it's not that a car, so when we look at, okay, wheels in relation to a car, so we're looking at wheels, Yeah, so the reverse relationship is so a car needs to roll as far as current technology is concerned. So speaking in terms of constraints between a car and a wheel, so I'm just trying to meditate here and see if I can come up with so what does a wheel need from a car? For example, not too much speed, not too much even torque or acceleration. For example, a tire will not last long if it's spinning so fast that it's burning. Sometimes this is intentional, but the fact is that wheel is not being served by the car, which does that. The wheel will have problems. The wheel will break down. The wheel's constraints will not be met. So that's one way that we can look back at the car from the wheel's perspective and say that the wheel has to be treated properly or it's going to blow up. You don't want to run over nails or over too rough of pothole or too rough of terrain. So this is not only the car but the driver and the path and the road, the terrain. Things are just starting to link together as usual. So from the perspective of the car, it's actually, I guess it's interesting that so the car needs from the wheel to have good tread, to have a good flat tread, a good pressure, good tire pressure, in order to roll. So really that's the core constraint. The car needs the wheel to roll, and if it's not rolling, then that's a problem for the car. And again, from the wheel's perspective, we had all these things that you don't want to do to the rubber to damage it, or to the wheel to break it, because it has constraints. And so protocols. So I guess I'm just highlighting right now that the fact that you can usually come at things from a top-down view or from a bottom-up view. And either one is okay. So if you want to theorize sort of, or in abstractly think about constraints of what shouldn't be happening or what the problem is, and then try to design protocols, that's fine. If you want to take instructions and use them to bootstrap your understandings of constraints, of the constraints of a system, that's fine. We find so also I was going to say, as long as you are doing proper feedback and not just letting it be a dead process that you're doing. So always be improving. Other words, always be open to improvement. Keep the APS healthy, flexible, flowing. Allow yourself to question anything. It's in the end, short term it could be painful. In the end, it's always better for you. So we can go top down and idealize constraints, things that we know shouldn't happen, and then we can try to formulate protocols or general processes whereby we don't breach those constraints. So in articulating this this expression, this strike point of the bootstrapping of bootstrapping the bootstrapper, we've been doing so. So I've been providing model type details of pieces of the puzzle, how they relate to each other, but also I've been giving more concrete protocols, which are an attempt to capture what kind of behaviors might be more successful at sustaining or otherwise you could say respecting constraints of types of things which need to be sustained or maintained in regards to the areas of concern. according to the model. That's how we would keep this isomorphic, so embodied context, not merely abstract or theoretical. So if we're at 10 hours right now, at, say, if I was speaking slowly, which let's say I am, we're talking about 6,000 words per hour as so far as what I've read. This is what averages tend to be, somewhere around here. This is a number we can work with to get an idea. So 10 hours times that, we've got 60,000 words, which is already a small book. So this would be what so this introduction right now has already come up to be a small book, assuming that I published most of what's being dictated here, hopefully with edits for quality, and of course maybe even implementations such as Crutch protocol, just to help guide and assist with using like the triad protocol in line of the media expression itself. So that would be obviously for the text only to be edited from the raw voicing, the dictate protocol that I'm executing here as part of my execution. So we've got quite a strike point path on this deck protocol and related protocols with the AO, the dashboard, as well. We've gone through triad protocol. We've contrasted temperaments and their respective triads. So these original recordings could be part of some product. I'm not sure. I don't think I would re-narrate any of this or anything that I work on. Although upon completion of the work of the project itself, the October 2019 media expression project, upon completion of it, I'm sure I would probably maybe even make an intro or whatever, the kind of prelude after a bunch of work is done. I don't expect this to last too much longer than, say, a couple more hours. I don't know. Bringing us up to past, who knows, maybe 70,000 plus words. I think already my so if we can take this into consideration, I've probably already surpassed all of what I wrote in my original, well, in all of my writings anyways. I think they added up to something like 50 or 60,000. The writings that I've done in especially the last, so since 2 years ago, and for 3 years prior, I was into writing, started my writing projects, my video series with the Crypto Town stuff, just discussing stuff, trying to sort things out, doing painting, some other things. That was the early days. I think I went through that already earlier. So I hope that so what I was hoping for is that I would be able to express enough here to allow people to start using index cards to implement the DEC protocol using the model schema. So we've got an idea of how execution may be represented, an idea how commitment may be represented. We've got an idea of how protocols may be represented. Of course, I didn't give the obvious expression method, which would be simply instructions, like even numbered instructions, like do this, do that, do that. So that's how protocols can be expressed within the DEC protocol. And that brings up an interesting notion here. So I'm referencing DEC protocol, but it's really DEC protocol makes sense in the context of a number of protocols which I've already attempted to articulate here. So like you could take this as like a it could very easily be translated into like a model schema protocol for the DEC protocol. So what I've been giving you are instructions for how to treat each card type, assign whatever color you want. I think I might be able to remember my color schema just in, for standardization purposes. I believe Anders also came independently towards a very similar color schema. As well as isomorphisms with the model, of course, which we've been in contact and discussed over the months and years. We have been trying to keep on the same page, and now it definitely is the time to converge, to come back together and share. Just because I think we're well advanced in our works right now. Very exciting times. It feels like we're becoming very fluidic, highly selectable. So, and it's because of tools like this, like protocols like this. The ability that I have now to fluidly speak about these systems and different concepts and ideas and things that are important to the network, given in a perspective of the work that I've been doing with Zhenya and Anders and quite a few others from the network. For the Portal Mountain work, I just especially would have to give a shout out and props to Eon. Props for hanging in there with us and really, I think, doing honor to the spirit, if you want to put it that way. Really looking forward, though, to getting more people online, get more cats online, get people more intentional, a bit more serious with the Portal Mountain stuff, which I guess really we're looking at building better relationships, building stronger relationships online. It's kind of difficult. Over chat it's difficult, but we have to be more intentional about this stuff if we want it to select. We've got to treat each other like VIPs. Whoever's within our network, like we need to connect. We need to contact. This brings up some other points and interesting protocols, which I've been thinking about. I'll just list off a couple. So one was the database iteration protocol, and this is a very grounding protocol as well. This is to fill out your own database, so keep track of your proximity guilds, start keeping track of your natural guilds, or at least in alias format, which can be just described as an occupation, something that does something, a skill, a profession, whatever. That's fine as an alias to the actual natural guilds. So database iteration protocol, we're just filling in our initial view of the dashboard, our view. So that's one thing that we have to understand with Scepter and Holochain compatible architecture is okay, so it's the agent-centric view as opposed to the data-centric view. So this is a holochain meme to be compared, or to compare with blockchain, which is data-centric. So we're saying the money in your wallet, that's a universal throughout the globe. That's what it is. But holochain says that everybody has their own view on the whole thing, right? So this is again in line with nature and with the neural operating system and what it has access to, the memory, internalized memory, externalized memory. So in the database iteration protocol, we are taking our relationships, so the context in which our relationships are happening. So for example, one person, a friend of yours or a colleague or a relative, they may appear in multiple proximity guilds. They may be in multiple, so you're relating to them in different ways. So just for a dumb example or whatever, like if you have a friend over to have coffee and talk about the guild, that's a proximity guild right there, in which certain natural guild, it's kind of like the DNA print of that proximity guild, will be present, said to be present in the abstract, in the what you are doing. So like the abstractions of what you're executing, of what you're doing, what you're committing to. So this is the natural guild view, and so the point is that so each proximity guild has its own type of, like, a DNA look to it. And every member of that proximity guild has their own construction of that, so their own perspective, their own view. This can make it difficult for compatibility. This is why a certain amount of coherence or convergence between the systems has to be enough to enable the thing to happen, whatever it is that you're doing together. This is where language barriers can be a problem, or cultural barriers can be a problem. just two far, vastly different experiences in that whatever field or particular area of behavior. The experiences are too vastly different. For example, one could be completely unaware, another could be a master, and so you're going to have different perspectives, and there's going to be a different relationship. Like perhaps you're mentoring, different things are going to be happening from different perspectives, even within within that proximity guild. Let's say you're mentoring. This is your proximity guild with a buddy of yours. So you're sharing one context, and then let's say you both have other things to do in different areas of town, and you both get into each of your own car, and now you're driving down the road together, and you are relating to each other in a totally different way. This could be said a different proximity guild, and this also highlights the nature of proximity guilds, the ephemeral nature of them, in how it's not really a thing, but it does pop up in your perception. It's part of your perception. So this is getting back to the phenomenology of it. You are experiencing a proximity guild, so you're experiencing others in a shared context, that you're sharing something with them. They are other actors. They are other beings, however you want to say or call or refer to these people you are cooperating with, potentially cooperating. So you're sharing certain protocols. You all had to go to driver training school and learn how to drive according to the law of the road. So back to the ephemeral nature, you are now with your friend, your buddy. You can see his car, and there are a few other cars. So now you have a number of cars. You come up to a traffic junction, and now you are obeying protocols, and by doing so, you're not killing and injuring each other. This is the constraints that are on the line or at stake. It's very dangerous and could cause severe bodily harm, which is not good for the body. So you're in this other proximity guild, and you can see how people are just coming and going in and out of that. You're having an experience of flow over time through traffic, but meanwhile you're seeing what people come and go, and you've just kind of entered the road. It's like the road is this shared context that we all have. This is instead of going to a store, like you and your buddy meet at a store, or you meet at a pool hall and you play some pool. Now you're doing a totally different thing. This is a different, could be seen or perceived as a different proximity guild. Let's say a tournament. Let's say you're doing a tournament, and so there's this whole different context. Instead of just having one over or visiting each other to discuss and practice and train in the guild. So, different proximity guilds, different people. This is where we're just trying to come up with something, a coherent model of the neural operating system and how it's working to present us with these proximity guilds, present us with the natural guilds, the way to speak in when we speak to each other in abstractions, and when we teach each other things. And when we do things, so we're having always, when your concrete comes up, whenever a proximity guild is there, that means that there are natural guilds. The natural guilds are there, and there is the fundamental guild. So we're having experience of this codependent arising among multiple layers of perception, and we call it the guild. We say this is a proximity guild, if and only if there is elements, or the fundamental guild is coming into view within that interaction or can be seen. which automatically happens with the spirit. When the spirit is in you, it's giving an embodied context and actively showing you how to relate and what to do. So you're with the spirit comes membership in the guild, or membership in the capital C church, the actual church, not the church of the earth, but the capital C one. So, coming back to deck protocol and this index card protocol and the the model schema or template, if you will, protocol for that. So we've described execution, commitment, and protocol.